Trump is back in office, round two. What does this mean for tech? Is this the beginning or the end of democracy? I have no idea, but we're going to break it down here. I'm TW. This is Justin, the Rush Hour Pod. We're here to give you an election recap. What does Trump mean for tech? This is factual. He is now our president, so let's just deal with the facts. And there's good and bad across the board, and we'll talk about, if you're in an H1B, if you're at Google, if you're at Meta, if you're at Tesla, Elon joining. What does all of this mean? Let's break it down. All right, let's start, Justin. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, let's jump in. So, I think the, kind of first thing on people's minds, tech workers, folks make a fair amount of money. What is going to be the impact on your taxes? So we kind of did a bit of a dive. And, if you're in tech, 150K plus salary, which a lot of us are, you'll likely have lower taxes or at a minimum, no increase in taxes. Trump has also proposed lowering capital gains tax, which will, impact your pockets. Which could also have some impact on your employee stock purchase plans and your stock holdings. Now, if you're a contractor in tech, Trump supports freelancers and additional income with some additional favorable tax treatments for like expenses, write-offs, things like that. So generally, personal finance wise, folks in tech looking like this will be, potentially better situation. On the business side, something else that looks relatively favorable. So your tech employer may also have tax savings from Trump's proposed, lowering corporate tax rate further. I think he'd even said some things going from like 21%, where it is now, to 15%. This can make the tech companies potentially even more profitable or incentivize investment, and also potentially lead to, higher stock values, bonuses, salary growth, et cetera. So that's kind of like one thing that stands out in terms of how it will affect, some of the pockets on the positive.
And I think about it in terms of, hey, the overall industry. You've got Elon now, which is different. He was not in 2016, the last go around for Trump. Him joining, we don't know really what's going to happen. Trump could drop him like a bad habit, but it sounds like he's going to be a part of this this term, which means, is that good for tech? Is that bad for tech? He definitely has some, enemies in tech, I would say, but overall, I think it's supportive. He's obviously trying to make government more efficient. We saw what he did with X in terms of laying off employees and really putting that on a almost like a maintenance skeleton crew, and it's operating and running, and he's turning that into, can he do that with the government? That will be interesting thing for us to kind of keep an eye on. I'm really curious as to what his role is going to be in all of this. But anyway, I wouldn't want to go too far ahead. What about the bad, Justin? What are some of the bad things we got to worry about?
Yeah, I think so. So one of the bad things, this kind of ties into some folks who may be having questions around like H1B status and what that means. Trump has had some pretty intense dialogue around immigration. Primarily focused on illegal immigration, but immigration generally. And this may be an environment where from an immigration perspective, it's kind of unclear exactly how far he's going to go, particularly when it looks at kind of skilled versus unskilled labor. So, Trump's stance has really been more restrictive, and depending on where things go, if he doesn't have a nuanced immigration policy, it's just going to be a lot harder for people to kind of come in from outside the country into some of these tech jobs, and may result in a talent shortage due to reduced H1B visas. So, 70% of H1B visa holders are, work in tech roles. And, any limitations or restrictions here could really lead to talent gaps, continue to drive talent gaps, and drive labor costs up as the talent pool shrinks. So you got companies like Google, Apple, and Microsoft who are probably, looking very, very closely at this. The other piece is, if he is going to take a more kind of stringent approach on and less nuanced approach on H1B visas, a lot of startups are founded by immigrants. I think over 55% of the country's most valuable startups are started by immigrants, companies like Stripe and Instacart. and really rely on these diverse talent pools. So this more restrictive immigration policy could have a big hindrance. But kind of going back to your Tesla point and Elon point, if Elon is able to kind of somewhat help Trump kind of put a thread the needle, so to say, on that conversation, then maybe it could still be a net benefit. But that is something that's definitely something to look out for in terms of immigration
Yeah,
policy.
if you have an H1B, this is something you should keep an eye on, right? Like I think having Elon in his corner is helpful because he has, SpaceX and Tesla have a lot of H1Bs. So I think if he has a voice in this thing, and we'll see what kind of role he takes, this is something you should keep an eye on. If you're out there with an H1B wondering what's next for me, you should be watching this very closely to see how Elon is involved, especially with these immigration policies, because it is concerning, right? Again, we're 30 plus years in tech. We have lots of friends in the industry that are on H1Bs. We understand this is a real concern here. So this is something to keep an eye on. We'll obviously subscribe, like below, and we'll get you updated as soon as we hear changes on this. We're definitely going to jump in and give you the updates. So the next one I thought we talk about is a few companies. What about Google? What are your thoughts? What is the impact on Google? Like, what is Trump's? He's talked in public about Google is trying to screw me and doesn't allow my campaign and they're sort of censoring my searches. What do you think happens to Google? Knowing Trump is sort of vindictive in a lot of ways, is he going to do something, or is Elon going to step in and help?
Yeah, I think this is a great point to bring up. And again, I think it's something that it's hard to have a black and white answer. I think it ultimately becomes kind of nuanced
Yeah.
because if you think of tech holistically, right, you feel like, based on what happened with the last election and, a lot of things happen with the company, with the companies and kind of restricting Trump access to the platforms, et cetera. He's definitely got a bone to pick with a lot of them. At the same
Yeah.
time, he wants to drive innovation, he wants the stock market to do well, all these other things. So I think for Google specifically, to answer your question, I think there could be some pressures to push Google to be broken up. I think that there's a lot of conversations that could go on around that. I think it's going to be the Google CEO trying to. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of these CEOs begin to pander more
Yep.
to Trump. I don't know if you saw on LinkedIn, Satya had a hey, congratulations to Trump winning, and we look forward to partnering. I think you're going to see a lot more of that within Silicon Valley, and so yeah, I think it kind of just depends, and if they can stay in his good side. And I think it's less about it's almost less about policies in some ways and more about just kind of how he's feeling about that company at on
Right.
that day. So as long as he's placating them, and then I imagine they're also going to Elon and being like, hey, wink, wink, nod, nod, put in a good word for me. You're going to see a lot more of that within big tech, which is a big change from I think how Silicon Valley has postured up until
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah, this shift, California, obviously blue state. A lot of the tech companies are here. A lot of them have kind of shifted too. We saw Mark Pincus. We saw some of the bigger sort of Bay Area tech pioneers jump ship, from blue to red and support Trump. And like I said, like you said, I'm not sure if this is them seeing the writing on the wall and saying I better get on his good side. But we don't know. We will see. This is another one we'll keep an eye on because I'm curious as well. Like what happens is if Trump is about having free speech and having an open space, then it shouldn't be about about narrowing the field and screwing over people that have wronged him. It should be about making it open, making policies more clear. And I can imagine, like Elon's done with X, hearing both sides is important. And if he's going to prioritize that as a policy, then that could be a great thing. That could be a great thing, but we don't know. Again, that's something we'll keep an eye on.
Yeah.
I'll keep my personal opinions out of that one. But like that seems like Meta is the next one that I wanted to get your opinion on. Facebook especially with Elon, they've kind of been going head to head with Threads and Next and Facebook, working with the Democratic Party in the past, and they've come out. What does this mean for Meta? Or if you're working at Meta or if you're invested in Meta, how are you feeling right now?
I I mean, it's a great question. I feel like it's one of those things where there's like a list of a few kind of tech CEOs who are probably on his list, right? The CEO of
Yeah,
Google and Zuckerberg, and probably put Bezos on that list as well of people who would go after. So I think
yeah,
that a lot of the bets that they've made, where they've made a lot of capital expenditures, et cetera, but where the advertising business is still doing well, like that's a positive thing. But anything that would result in them wanting to do any kind of M&A activity, et cetera, depending on how Trump is feeling, that could really curtail a lot of the activity there. With Amazon as well. So I kind of put Meta with Zuckerberg and Bezos kind of in the same kind of on the naughty list right now, and we'll just have to see
yeah.
how they're able to pander to him and maybe change his mind. I mean, this is a guy who's vice presidential candidate was said some pretty nasty stuff about him, and they were able to kind of get over it. So we'll just
Right.
see kind of how he's feeling once he takes office officially.
And then I mean there are way more companies in the Bay that are not Google, not X, not like what about these smaller ones? What about the startups? What about those that are trying to enter this space and innovate with AI? How should they be feeling? What are your thoughts on Trump being in office helping some of these, or is it going to hurt?
I think that it depends on how well it's kind of aligned with the last conversation we had about these major tech companies and how well they're able to pander to Trump. Because if they're able to successfully get in his good graces, and Elon kind of helps finesse some of that, I think it opens up a tremendous amount of M&A opportunity that hasn't existed. With the current FTC and what Lena Khan has done. I mean, if you think about the impact of the botched kind of Figma acquisition by Adobe and how they didn't go through and how many people it impacted out here. And, you're working for 10 years and you're unable to kind of like monetize that. I think that it's going to be a better environment overall for M&A activity and acquisitions, and not just kind of acquihires, which is kind of like what a lot of these AI companies have done now. The big asterisk on that is I think it's going to be on an individual basis relative to the companies, as opposed to it's going to open it up for every company. What do you think?
Right. Yeah, I'm also curious because Trump talks a big game about starting new businesses being easier, cutting the red tape, making it more opportunities for everyone. So is that going to spur more startups like in the Bay? Like it's been a while since we've seen sort of that influx of new startups kind of taking off and getting some real traction. It's been years, right? Like we haven't. When I came out here in '99, they were everywhere. I'm curious, is Trump going to help innovation in this way, especially with Elon at the helm? Are they going to allow for companies to sort of take advantage and not get stepped on, and give them more tax benefits and give them reasons to start companies and innovate
Yeah.
more? So that to me is something, again, we'll have to really keep an eye on to see how this all pans out. Like I'm curious myself. The next one I was going to talk about is the Elon companies. Those are the big ones that see. Do they have a major advantage? Like now you've got what Starlink, you've got Tesla with its robotaxi, SpaceX, the X itself, and the AI X. I guess he's starting as well.
Hmm.
It seems like he's going to have a major advantage now that he's in the office, sort of helping regulate and helping potentially his own companies and his own shareholders. Just, you take that for what it's worth. It's a little scary, but also like Elon's done a lot of incredible work in building those companies. So maybe removing some of the red tape and letting him get some things done could be good. And then the other one, OpenAI. Elon's come out very aggressively against OpenAI, and the changes they've made from going from a nonprofit to profit. How is the office going to sort of deal with that? If they go to Elon and ask him questions because he started the company, how is that going to pan out? Are they going to be regulated? Are they going to be stopped? It's going to be a lot of questions. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally like the great open versus closed source, uh, you know, debate around these AI companies is going to happen during this time, and your guess is as good as mine in terms of where things fall. But again, I think that a lot of it is around close personal connection to Trump, and that's what's going to be the driving factor as opposed to
Yeah,
more of like an ideology around certain things. I think the ideology is going to change, right? In some ways, like if you think about, you're talking about the different Elon companies. If you think about Tesla and the impact of EVs and credits, et cetera, that a lot of folks on the right weren't necessarily for that kind of drill baby drill, et cetera. Maybe he softens up on that a little bit, relative
yeah.
to current positioning. So I think we'll just have to wait and see, and but don't never count out Elon, I would say.
Yeah, I would say he's the one piece of this that's a very much a wild card for me. Like I'll just speak from myself personally. Like I do not like Trump. Like I've been, you know, anti-Trump for a long time, and not because I think he's a racist and he's ruining it's not about that. He's a businessman and he's very shrewd, and he's really done some, how just say, immoral things in business. Like they just, he allows litigation to lead the way. He will save money by not paying the average everyday man. I've heard stories of him, building some of his hotels, getting all these contractors in place to build things, and then just not paying any of them and waiting for them to sue him. And that's who he figures out who he pays. Like that's, I get it. In the end, as a businessman, maybe you save some money, right? You pay your law office a little more, but then as a human being, that seems wrong, and that's kind of where I'm against him. As a businessman, if his thing is I'm a great businessman, I argue the other way. He is not a great businessman. He's a con man, and that's all I have against him. I don't really. I get all the kung flu and all that as an Asian person, but that's my stance on him. If you're known for being a businessman and you're not good at that, I can't support you. Like it's just impossible. Like
Yeah.
despite all the other things. So that's kind of I just wanted to get that out there. But
No, for sure.
again, I'm he's our president now. I'm with it. Like I'm going to deal with it. I think Elon being in the mix is definitely gives me hope that maybe he'll talk some sense into him. But again, like let's see what happens, because selfishly, like, hey, taxes being lowered, maybe stocks go up. That's not the worst thing for me. Like,
Yeah.
it's just something. It's just a weird balance, and I'm not gonna say it any other way. I feel like it's just weird. It's just a weird, really strange feeling.
Yeah.
Like I don't like him, but selfishly, it may help me. I don't know like how to feel. It's
Yeah.
very
I, I,
conflicting,
I
but
I feel you on that. Like on the
that's just where we are. And
economics.
I think a lot of people probably say that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, say on the economics piece, I can definitely feel you, right? Like the conflicting opinion of, hey, my stock portfolio is going to go up, and has today, and it's been kind of like meteoric in terms of what the markets think about Elon. I mean, sorry, about Trump. At the same time, for me, like I'm a man of color, and my wife is Puerto Rican, and you remember all the kind of crazy comments that were said about that, and I think the divisiveness in terms of the language and the othering is extremely troubling, and I think we just have to acknowledge that. But this is the reality that we're in now, so I think everyone, just gotta try to navigate this new environment, do what's best for your family and others, and try to make an impact in the way that you can individually. But it's just like a new reality that we're in, and we'll see ultimately where things go over the next few months. But yeah, it definitely is a balance between kind of short term economic potential benefit and then long term will probably be lasting social impact on unrepresented communities and other folks that don't necessarily align with some of the narratives that have been put out there. So we'll see. It's
Yeah,
definitely
for
definitely a
sure.
tricky thing
I know
to navigate.
it is, and it's always weird to talk about it. Like I never get into politics. I never talk about it. It's just not my thing. I don't know enough about the inner workings of it. So I generally just stay out of it. But like this one's been hard to stay out of. You just it's just everywhere. I don't know what it is about. Maybe it is X and social being a little stronger this year. that feels like, hey, I'm seeing a lot more of both sides this time, and which definitely is an impact. But this, we got to deal with it. This is who's going to lead the country for the next 4 years. I'm hopeful, just like anyone else. I'm cautiously optimistic. Put our best foot forward, and let's see what happens. We'll get into more details. Obviously, we're short on time. Appreciate you jumping on. I know it's not easy middle of the day after the election, to sort of put our thoughts out here like that. I appreciate it. So we'll be back soon. Like and subscribe if you like. If you have questions, leave them below. We're here. I know this one is sort of a different rush hour pod, but jump in. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah,
Anything else,
let us know if
Justin?
you like this. No, just say let us know if you kind of like this shorter format. Um, always great rapping with you, T Dub, especially after events like today, and just sending positive energy and vibes to everyone out there, regardless of your leanings. Just moving the country forward in a positive way.